Mieremet and Klepper were well-known partners and strong leaders in the Amsterdam criminal world. They created a successful empire that operated in the underworld. Their alliance made them one of the most feared duos in the Netherlands. But as their power grew, so did their list of enemies. Betrayal, hits, and revenge became part of their daily life, leading to a cycle of violence that seemed to know no end. This is the story of the rise and fall of the criminal duo known as Spic and Span, and the trail of violence, betrayal, and retribution that followed them to the grave. Simon, also known as Sam Klepper, was born on April 29, 1960 in Jordaan, Amsterdam. He was born into a working-class family. He quickly became known as Sammy van de Westerstraat by everyone. He often got into fights, and by the time he was 14, Klepper was already very skilled at joyriding. Klepper was an entrepreneur, at least that's what he registered as in the population register. It was like a fancy way of saying he was a merchant. In the old days, when criminals had to declare their profession, they often wrote merchant and sometimes added in all kinds of things. Johannes, also known as John or Johnny Mieremet, was born on May 10, 1960 in Amsterdam. He grew up in Notorious, where he was already involved in the illegal trade of fireworks during primary school. Klepper spent a lot of time working with John Mieremet, whom he knew from the Amsterdam Kinkerboord neighborhood. He and Sam Klepper were childhood friends. The two were always together. They even lived at the same place for some time, at Ruysdaelstraat 48, above Robert Koning's coffee shop. In the early 1980s, they were members of the Kinkerboord gang called De Denkers, which also included Kees Houtman and George Van Cleef. The Kinkerboord gang was connected with the drug lord Charles Wolfsman. This criminal organization stole tens of millions of guilders in several impressive bank robberies. In May 1985, the gang stole 3 million guilders by driving a shovel into the main post office in Groningen. Later, they planned to rob De Nederlandsche Bank on Frederiksplein in Amsterdam using an aerial work platform. However, the police stopped this plan. The group got the nickname The Thinkers from the Central Criminal Investigation Information Service, CRI, because their robberies were carefully planned, sometimes taking months of preparation. The Thinkers made millions of guilders from the bank robberies, which were never solved and were never caught. In the mid-1980s, Klepper started working in the international drug and arms trade. In February 1986, he was caught in the act in the parking lot of the Van der Valk Bridge restaurant along the Amsterdam-Hague highway. The van he was driving had 500 kilos of hashish inside. The person who arranged the transport, a hashish dealer named Guys van Dam Sr., was also arrested at the restaurant. Klepper told the police that he believed he was transporting color televisions. However, like Van Dam, he was sentenced to 15 months in prison. In the late 1980s, Klepper became friends with Mafia boss Klaas Bruinsma. Klaas Bruinsma divided his organization into separate divisions for drugs, investments, and violent crimes. According to crime reporter Bart Middelburg of Het Peril, Bruinsma's main bodyguard, Gert Roos, revealed that Klepper and Mieremet were put in charge of managing the slot machine division on a daily basis. Cafes, coffee shops, and arcades were given an offer they couldn't refuse. Mieremet and Klepper earned the nickname Spic and Span, a cleaning product, because they committed crimes so smoothly that the police never had enough evidence to charge them with any crime. According to the judiciary, they were ruthless killers and top figures in the criminal world. The book 21 Ways to Kill Silently was found in Klepper's home, not that he was much of a reader. He mentioned to John van den Heuvel of De Telegraaf that he had heard of a book about a hitman who saw the ghosts of his victims appear in his bedroom at night. When Klepper mentioned that book to a good friend, the response was, "Well, Sam, we don't have to be afraid of that. We are dealing with so many ghosts that they would never fit in our bedroom again." Within a few years, Sam Klepper had become one of the most significant partners of Bruinsma. However, Bruinsma began to lose control of his organization. He was addicted to cocaine and often got into fights, including with Ljubinko Bečirović, also known as Duja, the leader of the feared Jugos gang. Bečirović was attacked during the grand opening of a cafe owned by Klepper and Mieremet. On October 27, 1990, Bečirović passed away after being injured in an attack that was ordered by Klaas Bruinsma. Due to his unpredictable behavior, Klaus Bruinsma had become a direct business risk for his partners in crime. His days were numbered. After the assassination of Klaus Bruinsma on June 27, 1991, in front of the Amsterdam Hilton Hotel, Sam Klepper quickly rose to the top. Later, he admitted to crime reporter Bas van Hout that he had been involved in Bruinsma's assassination. In Van Hout's book, The Hunt for the Heirs of Bruinsma, a former Bruinsma associate said, "We flipped a coin, heads or tails, not whether we would kill Klaus, but who would do it." With Bruinsma's reign of terror abruptly ended, a power vacuum emerged, igniting a fierce struggle for control within the criminal hierarchy. Klepper and Mieremet, once mere foot soldiers, now found themselves thrust into the chaos, forced to navigate the treacherous waters of betrayal and retribution that would define their legacies in the years to come. Sorry to interrupt, but before we continue, I have a small request. We noticed that a lot of our viewers are not subscribed yet. In order to grow our channel, we would really appreciate if you could subscribe to our channel and leave a like and comment. That would really help us a lot. Thanks. In the aftermath of Bruinsma's brutal assassination, Klepper and Mieremet seized the opportunity to rise through the ranks, leveraging their connections and ruthless determination to stake their claim in the Amsterdam underworld. However, their rise was filled with violence as they fought against tough enemies and the constant risk of revenge for Bruinsma's death. As the city's crime scene became chaotic, it set the scene for a big story of power fights, betrayals, and the quest for control that would be remembered in Amsterdam's underworld for a long time. From the start, there was a story circulating in the underworld that the new leader of the Jugos, Jocha Jokic, had ordered Bruinsma's assassination. This added to his reputation as a deadly killing machine. The murder of Bruinsma caused great unrest in the underworld. On August 19, 1991, Ed S., former secretary of Bruinsma, was attacked in his home on Hudsonstraat in Amsterdam by a group of foreign creditors. They threatened him with guns, demanding to know the whereabouts of Klepper and Mieremet. On the same day, Klepper filed a report of the threat at the Meer en Waar police station in Amsterdam West. However, the police were reluctant to suddenly provide him with protection. 10 days later, on August 29, 1991, following a tip, the police found a rented Renault Clio from Amsterdam in the parking lot of the Alkmaar Motel. Inside were machine guns, pistols, hand grenades, and ammunition. The motel and a nearby nursing home were hastily evacuated, and the explosive ordnance disposal unit was called in. The police tactical unit arrested two men at the Renault Clio, Sam Klepper and John Mieremet. A search of Klepper's house yielded not only ammunition, but also a rare standard work, 21 Ways of Silent Killing. In November 1991, Spic and Span were sentenced to a year and a half in prison for illegal weapons possession. According to the Public Prosecution Service, Klepper and Mieremet either had plans for an armed operation or were heavily armed to defend themselves against an attack. Nonsense. It was a setup, said Gort Roos to Bart Middelberg in his book De Dominee, Rise and Fall of Mafia Boss Klaus Bruinsma. Sam and John just handled it smartly. If they really felt threatened, they wouldn't have taken a rental car, but their own armored Renault Turbo, a former royal car. Besides, they would have had their bodyguards with them. No, they just made the call themselves. They saw trouble coming, and where's the safest place to be? In prison. And by the time you get out, maybe all that nonsense is over. There were many misunderstandings about the heirs of Bruinsma. For years, the Justice Department believed that Bruinsma had been succeeded by the Delta organization, whose top members were thought to be Etienne Urca, formerly the second-in-command under Bruinsma, businessman and porn king Big Charles Geertz, and lawyer John Engelsma. However, as Bas van Hout revealed in The Hunt for the Heirs of Bruinsma, the gang was actually led by former bank robbers Stanley H., Mink K., and John Famer. In his book, they are referred to by different names. Additionally, Klepper and Mieremet played significant roles in this gang. They had excellent international connections. Klepper, for example, had supplied weapons to the Italian Mafia. For his business, he always carried a bag full of mobile phones. Millions were pouring in. Through fake companies in countries like Ireland, Belgium, and the Netherlands, they laundered black money on a large scale. Klepper chuckled as he recounted the difficulty he had a few years ago in closing a personal secret account at an Austrian bank. There were already 14.9 million guilders in it by then. When I opened that account, I gave a false name, but the director suddenly wanted to see my passport. So I had a blank passport brought in from the Netherlands and put that false name in it. It ended in a drawn-out lawsuit, but I got everything back to the last cent. Look, here are the newspaper clippings from the Austrian press. Together with Mieremet, Klepper had made significant investments in the Amsterdam hospitality industry. He had financial interests in establishments like the Yab Yum sex club. His power in the criminal world was immense. For Klepper, nothing seemed impossible. He was behind the theft of the floppy disks from prosecutor Joe Valente. Klepper was searching for clues as to where the missing Heineken millions had gone and gave them as a gift to drug lord Charles Zwolsman. In 1994, Klepper ordered the infamous theft of paintings from the Rembrandt house, and for fun, he once had the suitcase of Henny Huseman's lottery show stolen. It was a transparent thing with banknotes glued inside. Klepper would then happily walk around with it on the streets. He saw the battle with justice as a game. Klepper knew all about ongoing investigations and claimed to have confidential memos from the then Amsterdam chief prosecutor, Hans Wraking, himself. There was nothing more fun than getting in the way of the opponent. If he felt like it, Klepper would casually crash into a car with a surveillance team. If a member of such a team had disguised themselves, Klepper would immediately notice, "Hey, sweetheart, you look good." In December 1999, the National Ombudsman upheld a complaint filed by the tourists Klepper and Mieremet, who were officially residing in Dublin at the time, against the police. They were stopped and checked for illegal weapon possession on November 13, 1997, after behaving conspicuously in PC Hoofstraat, carrying a suspicious box. When the friends turned out to be unarmed and the box contained expensive cameras, they were let go. Klepper in Angel Place. "We had them nicely. During the chase, a fellow passenger jumped out of the car and hid our weapons in the Vondelpark." After a criminal career of over 20 years, Klepper was almost retired. For about 4 years, he had been with the Hells Angels. "He was a real character," said President Big Willem in October 2000 to Elsevier. "Of course, I knew his reputation, but one person is a baker, another deals in narcotics. Sam also had another side." One moment, Klepper would pull out his gun to emphasize a story about a fellow criminal. The next moment, he would almost tenderly show pictures of his wife Sandra and their 2 sons, of his sister, who had died of cancer, and of his huge collection of Kreidlers and Zundaps in the garage of his sugar-white villa in Neerpelt, Belgium. He didn't drink a drop and didn't use drugs. You have to stay alert. Due to his tough actions, including rip deals, Klepper had made many enemies over the years. In the early 90s, Alkmaar drug baron Jaap van der Heijden put out a contract on Klepper's head. It was going to be a bloody 1993, van der Heijden said in a phone call. This conversation was intercepted by a Haarlem detective from the Criminal Intelligence Service, and the tip was allegedly passed on to Klepper. On April 10, 1993, van der Heijden, on leave from prison, was blown up at the front door of his house by a piece of Semtex detonated remotely, mixed with scrap metal. John Femur was said to have pressed the button and claimed he saw van der Heijden perform a somersault. Klepper himself said that with assassinations, it was often a matter of service and favor. You helped each other with tricky tasks. During one conversation, Klepper claimed to have been involved in a total of 14 liquidations. They were never solved. The assassination of Jan Femer on September 23, 2000 was a shock for Klepper. He hired a Bosnian bodyguard. This 43-year-old Farid S. had been a member of an anti-sniper unit in his homeland during the recent war. As a precaution, Klepper also bought a bulletproof plate. With this, he could shield his upper body in case of an attack. On Tuesday afternoon, October 10, 2000, Klepper drove with Farid S. and the 41-year-old handyman Peter B. to his luxury penthouse on Van Leyenberglaan in Amsterdam Buitenveldert. Klepper had promised Farid a television set and a video. Around 4:30 p.m., the 3 men came out. Farid carried the TV, Peter the video. As they loaded the equipment into Klepper's waiting BMW, they heard a few muffled shots. Klepper was fired upon by a man holding an umbrella diagonally in front of him. He didn't have time to draw his gun and fell heavily to the ground. Farid S. quickly grabbed his submachine gun and, along with the unarmed Peter B., started shooting and chasing after the attacker. The hitman fled past the police station across from Van Leyenberglaan to the parking lot and escaped in a Volkswagen Polo. It was found burned out half an hour later in Amsterdam Oost. The murder weapon was found in a backpack on the bike path along the A10 Ring Road. Sam Klepper died from his injuries. He was hit 4 times, according to the coroner's report. 1 bullet entered from the back of the neck and bullet exited from the front of the head. Another bullet entered between the shoulder blades and exited through the heart from the front. Shortly after the attack, the alarmed John Mieremet arrived at the scene, along with Heineken kidnapper Willem Holleder. They were briefly questioned by the police and then allowed to leave. According to Amsterdam lawyer Adele van der Plas, the liquidations of Klepper and Femur were a direct result of the revelations made by the Spic Commission regarding the contacts between her client Mink K, who was friends with the two victims, and Amsterdam prosecutor Fred Teven. During a closed session of the appeal against Mink K, who had been convicted after a spectacular weapons find, he confirmed his role as an informant. Due to a mistake, this was overheard by the press. The bloody retribution may have been warnings directed at Mink K to keep quiet. By the way, Mieremet's name was on a handwritten list of weapons found on Mink K at his arrest. Various rumors circulated about the assassination of Klepper. Klepper was reportedly tracking down the presumably Yugoslav group responsible for the attack on Femur. Someone sought revenge for a past liquidation. There were talks of a conflict between top criminals. In this context, the name of the Heineken kidnapper, Cor van Hout, was frequently mentioned. He was estranged from his old buddy, Willem Holleder. By sheer luck, Cor van Hout had survived an assassination attempt on March 27, 1996, in front of his home on Deurloostraat in Amsterdam. Klepper was believed to be responsible for this, according to van Hout. On December 21, 2000, 2 months after Klepper's liquidation, Cor van Hout was shot at again, but this time too, he survived the attack. A month later, Mieremet and his Yugoslav business partner, Paja M, were arrested based on information from van Hout. However, due to a lack of evidence, the police had to release them. On Monday afternoon, February 25, 2002, John Mieremet left the office of one of his lawyers on Keizersgracht in Amsterdam without bodyguards. Suddenly, a man with a full-face helmet emerged and shot Mieremet. The shooter escaped on a motorcycle. Mieremet was hit by 4 bullets in his lower abdomen and thighs, but he survived the attack. Once again, various rumors circulated. Some suggested the attack was a revenge attempt by Cor van Hout. Others said it was a warning from the Yugoslavs. A few days after Mieremet's failed assassination attempt, 52-year-old Egyptian criminal Magdi Barsoum was shot at close range in the head in the Bloodstrat in the red light district. He died in the hospital. In the same Bloodstrat on May 3, 2000, Kenyan drug dealer Ibrahim Akasha was shot dead by a passing cyclist. Akasha had a meeting scheduled with Magdi Barsoum, co-owner of the Red Light Bar around the corner from Bloodstrat, on the morning of May 3rd. Akasha's organization was supposed to sell a batch of hashish to Barsoum, who in turn had close contacts with the Yugoslavs led by Josic, but it was allegedly ripped off by Sam Klepper. Barsoum had to pay, Akasha thought, but before his appointment with Barsoum, he was liquidated. The police did not rule out the possibility that Klepper was fined for the ripped batch of drugs. When he refused to pay, according to one assumption, John Femur was shot dead as a warning. Because Klepper still refused to pay, he became the next victim. The funeral of Sam Klepper, who had posthumously received the coveted colors from the Hells Angels, did not go unnoticed. His casket was escorted by hundreds of brothers on roaring Harley-Davidsons along the blocked A10 to the St. Barbara Cemetery. There, amidst the sounds of The Godfather, a mass farewell was bid. Like most liquidations, it seemed that Sam Klepper's murder would remain unsolved. To everyone's surprise, on June 20th, 2002, in the Bulgarian capital Sofia, 39-year-old Jocha Josic was arrested at the request of the Dutch justice. The public prosecutor suspected him of involvement in the liquidations of John Femur and Sam Klepper. The surprise grew when John Mieremet claimed in an exclusive interview with crime reporter John van den Heuvel of De Telegraaf that Heineken kidnapper Willem Holleder was behind the attack on Klepper. According to Mieremet, a dispute had arisen between himself on one side and Holleder and real estate trader Willem Enstra on the other over Klepper's inheritance. By going to the police with this story, Mieremet said he was taking a big risk, but I have nothing to lose. Either I get shot or I talk. Meanwhile, the underworld remained turbulent. At the end of January 2003, Cor van Hout was liquidated in Amstelveen. This retribution was not an isolated incident. On December 5, 2002, there was a failed attempt on the life of 35-year-old Guys Van Dam Jr., an acquaintance of both Van Hout and Klepper. On January 14, 2002 in Diemen, George Pleeger was shot dead, reportedly a member of Klepper's organization. In the investigation, the name of Mieremet came up frequently. The question was, how long will he survive? At the end of 2004, Mieremet went to Thailand with Ferry de Kock to start a project near Pattaya. After his former lawyer, Hingst, was killed on October 31, 2005, he talked to crime journalist John van den Heuvel over the phone from Thailand. They clean up after each other. Great, Mieremet said. A few days later, he was shot twice in the head and once in the stomach in his office. On the same day, real estate dealer Kees Houtman, an old friend of Mieremet, was also killed in Amsterdam, Osdorp. A week later, George van Cleef was shot dead at a marina in Amsterdam South. In 2019, Willem Holleder was sentenced to life in prison for ordering 6 murders, including Mieremet's. The court confirmed this verdict on appeal. Although Mieremet reportedly reserved 2 graves next to each other at the Sint Barbara Cemetery in Amsterdam in early 2000, he was buried in Neerpelt on November 15, 2005. What do you think about this story? Please leave your comments down below and remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Thank you very much.